Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan selamat datang kepada semua hadirin ke majlis ceramah pada hari ini. Alhamdulillah, pada pagi ini sekali lagi kita berjumpa dalam program syarahan maya mengenai manuskrip Melayu anjuran ISTAC IIUM dengan kerjasama Persatuan Sejarah Malaysia dan Perpustakaan UIA. Sukacita dimaklumkan juga bahawa ceramah ini direkodkan dan oleh itu boleh diakses juga melalui YouTube di bawah adres ISTAC TV. Ceramah pada pagi ini merupakan ceramah ke-9 dalam program ini. Pada kesempatan ini kita amat bertuah mendapat penceramah yang pakar dan amat berpengalaman tentang subjek yang diperkatakan, iaitu filosofi. Tajuk ceramah beliau ialah Malay-Islamic Philosophical Works, How to Identify Them. Nama penceramah tidak lain dan tidak bukan Prof. Emeritus Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar. Seperti biasa, ceramah akan mengambil masa kira-kira 1 jam dan diikuti dengan sesi soal jawab kira-kira setengah jam. Apa-apa soalan yang ingin diajukan kepada penceramah, sila type dalam chat box. Saya syorkan tuan-tuan mengambil peluang ini dengan mengemukakan soalan supaya kita mendapat manfaat yang maksimal daripada majlis ini. Sekarang saya ingin memperkenalkan penceramah pada pagi ini, iaitu Prof. Emeritus Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar. He is presently holder of Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology, Civilisational Studies and Renewal, ISTAC IIUM. Previously, he was director of Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin Center for Islamic Studies, University of Brunei Darussalam, 2013 to 2017. Deputy Chief Executive Officer of International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies Malaysia, 2008 to 2012, and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Research and Human Resource at the University of Malaya, 1995 to 2000. In addition, he was also Chair Professor of Philosophy of Science, University of Malaya, 1992-2000, Professor of Malay Chair on Islam in Southeast Asia, Prince Al-Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, Georgetown University, USA, 2000 to 2005, and Chair Professor of Islamic Civilization and Contemporary Issues, Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin Center for Islamic Studies, University Brunei Darussalam, 2014 to 2018. He has received many academic awards. Early this month, this December, he received the Al-Farabi International Award from Ministry of Science, Research and Technology, Iran. He has authored and edited more than 40 books and has written many articles and papers for journals and conferences. Next, I would like to introduce about the topic that we will be talking today. Malay manuscripts are considered as very important resource in understanding Malay thought and wisdom, in short, Malay mind. The content of Malay manuscripts covers a wide range of subjects like history, literature, medicine, travelogue, tips on various matters like how to choose a piece of land for dwelling, tips on building a good house, tips for safe travel, etc., etc. However, the most popular subject in Malay manuscript are on Islamic knowledge. In Indonesia, wisdom in Malay manuscript are known as kearifan lokal, implying that the content in Malay manuscript are from the local people, the Malays. The subject on philosophy in Malay manuscript are seldom discussed, as far as I know, probably because of difficulty in identifying them and to understand their criteria. Therefore, this lecture is important to guide us all on identifying philosophical subject in Malay manuscripts. So I have introduced the person, and also some of the basic synopsis as far as I understand it. And now I would like to invite Prof. Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar, the speaker for today, to give his lectures. Please, Prof.
Terima kasih Dr. Wan Ali selaku pengerusi, moderator dan juga selaku penyelaras, pengelola siri kuliah yang sudah berjalan sekian lama. Saya berterima kasih atas undangan kepada saya untuk menyempurnakan salah satu kuliah dalam siri ini. Saya memaklumkan kepada beliau bahawa saya memilih untuk menyampaikan ceramah ini dalam bahasa Inggeris, tetapi memandangkan topik itu ada banyak berkenaan dengan manuskrip Melayu. Jadi saya akan di beberapa nanti saya akan mungkin berlaku campur-campur antara penyampaian dalam bahasa Melayu dan bahasa Inggeris. Baik, terima kasih. Thank you very much to all listeners that that you have come to listen to me what I need to say about the topic. The topic is Malay-Islamic philosophical works, with the subtitle "How to Identify Them." I would like to begin with this statement. You may ask why I choose this topic. I consider myself, even right now, at my advanced age of more than 70 years, I still think myself as being a student of manuscript studies, not just Malay manuscripts, but also Arabic manuscripts, but some other manuscripts of the Muslim languages like Persian, because I'm still learning, basically. I know little about the world of manuscripts. I first started approaching study of the study of manuscripts, selected manuscripts, when I was doing my PhD at Temple University, Philadelphia. I was studying a topic on Islamic philosophies of science, and which is a branch of Islamic philosophy in general, because we have also other branches like metaphysics, like political science, like what we call this philosophical kalam of dialectical theology, which has a lot of philosophy. Yeah. So I have to study to do research on some of the manuscripts, because the topic requires me to do that. And this one, I see that there were manuscripts that had never been touched by scholars. It's there in the library, because many manuscripts in the libraries in the United States, which I know where I did my research, and there were those manuscripts which basically these manuscripts have not yet been edited, and I learned that edition, tahqiq, is a very important aspect of manuscript studies. Even want to study any particular manuscript, we have to ask ourselves, has this manuscript been edited? All right. There's some haven't been edited, that's all, but nothing else, just edited. But edition of a manuscript is a major contribution and requires a lot of patience. And this is what many people don't have. Tak sabarlah, nak cepat. Bila nak cepat, you cannot go into that field if you are looking for a quick way. So that, and then you have manuscripts that have been edited but not yet studied, not yet analyzed. So some graduate students, some PhD students select this category of manuscript which have been edited, all right, based on certain number of manuscripts. We had a critical edition. So that critical edition is useful to serve as a basis for our analytical study of that. So even the study, you have to select it. Some researchers does just look at certain aspect of the book, just get a glimpse of the content of the manuscript, right? Then we have another category, those who the edited manuscripts are translated. The critical edition is translated with commentary, with notes, with note. This is another category. That kind of work is allowed in Western countries. They accept that as a PhD thesis, but this is not accepted in our country, in only many Muslim countries. That is a waste, and there's a waste in it, because we block the road. No. Translation of manuscripts cannot be accepted as PhD, but you don't know. We don't know how laborious, how difficult, what brainstorming, a lot of reflection requires to do this kind of work. And this is the people who later on emerge as good scholars. As good scholars. To be trained in the study of manuscripts actually is a good way to becoming a good thinker, a good philosopher, as Ibn. So in the West, so we have like this the Oriental and African studies. They're very good. Not many, but so I thought I want to say something. In other words, although we have many universities, many colleges, Islamic colleges, and we have many several centers on Malay studies, or Malay civilization, but somehow I'm sorry to say this. When I was at the University of Malaya, for example, when I was Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, I had to merge the Jabatan Pengajian Melayu, Department of Malay Studies, and the Academy of the Malay Academy. Now we have Academy Pengajian Melayu there, but I don't see the kind of, I mean, when we do that, we were hoping that we will produce scholars in Malay studies who will study our legacy, the legacy of Malay civilization. But sorry to say, I think we have declined, not advanced. So I'm just giving you one example. So hopefully we adopt a new attitude towards manuscripts. And of course, today I'm just going to speak only about one particular aspect of this large area, this treasury of works, what we call even limit to Malay-Islamic manuscripts. So this is basically what I want to say this morning to go into the topic. All right. Now, let me with a few introductory remarks. Yeah, right from the time when I was a student decades ago, I noticed, and I still notice, observe, that there are certain questions. There are certain questions about the Malays, about the Malays, and philosophy that have been floating around for a long time. Yeah, as long as I can remember, in the beginning until now. So, what are some of these questions and issues about this relationship between the Malays and philosophy? I give you here three here. To mention just three, the most related to my talk today. First is the issue of the presence of philosophy in Malay literary works. So some people ask, yes, we have a large treasury of Malay literary works on various that covers many topics, domains. Yeah, but what about philosophy? Yeah? But that question itself was motivated by a certain understanding of what philosophy is. Whether we are using the word English word philosophy, or using the Malay words derived from Arabic, falsafa, or its equivalent, hikmah, and in the Malay manuscript as well, hikmat, or yeah, even the question, was there pre-Islamic Malay philosophy? I know some of, for example, at one university, he contacted me frequently on this issue of the pre-Islamic Malay philosophy, because there were Muslims, the intelligentsia, the cendekiawan, the bijak, the people there. Yes, certainly it is a valid question. Yeah. So before Islam came, did some Malay thinkers, study philosophy? Well, I think the evidence shows that there was in Srivijaya, there was that we can find that. But then, I mean, we can, based on what I already know, certain things about this, say in Palembang and the Srivijaya. So yes, the study of philosophy was confined to a certain group, but mostly studied through the language of Sanskrit. Yeah, in other words, Malay philosophy was expressed in Sanskrit. But our interest here is, of course, is on the Malay-Islamic philosophical tradition. So we hear the question, we hear some questions, discussion. Was there and is it still here the Malay-Islamic philosophical tradition? Do we have that? Okay, if not now, sometimes in the past. These are questions that some people try to attempt to answer, all right, to understand that. But as I think, if I may say, that one important observation that I can make after surveying these kinds of discussion, the conversations taking place on this subject, basically, we cannot satisfactorily answer these questions without first being clear on the meaning of philosophy and the qualifier Malay-Islamic. Yeah. One friend, when they saw the title of this presentation, Malay-Islamic philosophical works, why do you use the term Malay-Islamic? Well, I said, with reference to philosophy, this is to be understood in a technical way. First of all, it is Malay. It is a Malay precisely because the language used in these philosophical works under Islam, it was in Jawi, basically Jawi. In other words, is based on the alphabetical system. The Jawi based on the Arabic, the alphabets, but we have added certain letters to suit the tongue, the Malay tongue. But whatever it is, Jawi became a literary vehicle. The Malay vehicle, at least in the past, before the modern period, we have that large volume of Malay literary works written in the Malay Arabic script, and that's called the classical Malay. So that's the reason, one reason. And then, but the other one is Islamic. It had to be Islamic because there was Malay work before Islam, Hindu, the Buddhism, the influence, Malay philosophical thought before the Islamic period. But we are dealing now with the Islamic. In other words, the themes, the main ideas in this philosophy influenced by Islam, and therefore influenced by what was going on in the Islamic world. So the intellectual development in the Islamic world, basically the history of intellectual thought in Islam, influence this Malay Islamic philosophical tradition. So there is a reason why all right. Dr. Wan, is it okay now? Can you hear now? There's disrupts some disturbance.
Oh, okay, Prof. You can
Okay,
continue.
sorry,
now.
yes.
Yes, yes.
No. Yeah. So, all right. That's what I was saying, that we need to understand what we mean by philosophy, philosophical tradition. What also meant by Malay-Islamic. So we should narrow now our concentration, our focus on the Malay-Islamic philosophical works. But my argument is that without a proper understanding of this, we cannot really answer those questions that we have posed. Okay, let me go now to the next. All right. Now, the premise of my discussion today is this: assumptions, very important. Well, it's not really assumptions; it is a premise. It is something factual. Before the influence of modern Western thought, Malay Islamic civilization was already a full-fledged civilization with its own philosophical schools of thought. So I'm proposing, I'm this. Yeah? I argue this, and what I believe that it is so. In our we're talking about 14th centuries, 15th centuries, 16th centuries, until the arrival of Western powers, especially later in the 17th century beyond and beyond. But during those periods, we have a full-fledged civilization, which means that it must have its own philosophical tradition. But what that philosophical tradition is, that was determined by both Islam, or to be more precise, the Malay understanding of Islam, because the Islam that arrived in the Malay world was Islam that was already interpreted by the people, by the Muslims in the middle, in central, in the Middle East, in the Arab world, in the Persian world. Yeah, so it is they have interpreted. And then, of course, we can see that in the history of the Islamic world, there was a kind of line of departure in the new approach to Islamic thought with Al-Ghazali. Yeah. So Al-Ghazali, or the Ibn Khaldun, described Al-Ghazali as that that theologian, that scholar who laid down basically a new basis for studying philosophy. Before him, you had the philosophy that was contributed or was developed by Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Al-Biruni. So especially the three first scholars that I mentioned, because they belong to that school of thought known as the Peripatetics, the Al-Mas'iyun, the Peripatetics. So that it is a very important school as far as falsafa is concerned. And in fact, many Muslims today understand the word falsafa in that sense. Yeah? But then it is important to realize that in Islamic civilization, there were several schools of philosophy, not just one. And it is and I'll come to this more about basically the core of our discussion now. Yeah, but the point is, Islam, the Malay Islam, Islam in the Malay world had already advanced in philosophy with various schools of thought. So sometimes there were clashes. I think the clash between the Judea school of Hamzah Fansuri and Samsudin Sumatrani, and then the later school like the Raniri. So that's a good example. I mean, but there was a reflection of what was going on in the larger part of the Islamic world. That was not unique to the Malay world. But we also have our own version. We have our own version of that philosophical quarrel. Basically, it was the quarrel between two philosophical schools of thought in the Malay world. That is the Ibn Arabi inspired Wujudiyah school of Hamzah Fansuri, and basically the philosophical Kalam, and that school, philosophical school of Kalam of Araniri. Just an example. We have on the smaller scale that existed in various parts of the Malay archipelago, and this is something that should be of interest to historians of Malay philosophical ideas. All right, but my premise is that we would have, but our understanding of that will depend on what we mean precisely by philosophy. So maybe if we understand by philosophy as only limited to falsafa, in the way in we falsafa of the preparatory school. So that's why some ask, why don't we find works on Al-Kindi in our part of the world? No, why no works on Farabi in the Malay world? All right, why don't we have works by Ibn Sina, except in the field of medicine? So even when we know that, for example, the Ibn Sina's famous book, Canon of Medicine, Confitted, was found in the library, only of the this in Riau, for example. So it was not studied, it was not translated, but no, the study they would understand, but they were applied to what they call the area of medical science, in medicine, in Malay Islamic medicine. Can we call that a part of philosophy? Yes, because in Islamic philosophical works, medicine was considered as a very important branch of philosophy. One of the main branches of philosophy was medical science, which came under natural science. So that's why we see in many Malay manuscripts, all right, with the title having the word hikmah, most of them dealing with medical wisdom, something to do how to treat diseases and so on. That's an important aspect of Malay attachment or Malay concentration on philosophy. All right, now therefore it is important to define this term philosophy, regardless of the term in Malay, whether we are using hikmah or using falsafa. All right, say kebijaksanaan, and philosophy in English, we have to describe it. We have to understand what it means. I was attracted to the paper, very important paper by my own teacher, Syed Hussain Nasar, when there was that famous Muslim Education Conference in Mecca in 1977. The big conference. Many books came out from that conference, basically giving the Islamic perspective on natural and social sciences, on literature, and so on. So that, I think I would advise, I would certainly advise you to refer again to that paper. Although now, how many years already? 77 until 22 now. Yeah, it's a long time ago. And there are many. Actually, Saros and Nasser try to present a paper to tell Muslim what philosophy means to us Muslim. How do we understand philosophy? And if we want to revive the teaching and tradition of philosophy, then we should realize this. And it also has his paper has me also to answer this, to identify these philosophical works. So when we look at the Malay manuscript, if you want to study philosophy, where do you go to? I think that paper was important because it's now published as a chapter in a book, which he himself edited but published by the organizer of that conference in Makkah. So the first one is the first of all, yes, philosophy refers to falsafah, the falsafah as understood in the history of Islam. In other words, it refers to the philosophy of a particular school of thought, beginning with Al-Kindi, then further developed by Al-Farabi, and then another famous member of the school, Al-Biruni. I'm sorry, Ibn Sina. Al-Biruni did not belong to the school. Actually, Al-Biruni, a very famous Muslim philosopher and scientist, he did not belong to any particular school. He was independent-minded, not attached to any particular mazhab or school. So that is the first. Yes, that is certainly philosophy. So the works by the scholars, many philosophical. It's about metaphysics, about basically philosophy, about God, about religion. Yes, but I think Saint Nasser also pointed out that what is philosophy? If you mean by hikmah, if by philosophy you mean hikmah, that is mentioned many times in the Quran, and the Quran refers to itself as the Wal Quranil Hakim. By the Quran, that is full of wisdom. So many kinds of wisdom and many forms of wisdom at various levels. So, but the Quran is using the word hikmah, but many of the hikmah refers to what was understood as a falsafa. But as part of the changing the orientation of the Muslim mind, because the word philosophy, the word falsafa is derived from the Greek, so it's something about the foreign source of that idea. So after Al-Ghazali onward, the tendency was a kind of not to use the word falsafa, but to use the word hikmah. So therefore we may say then Islamic philosophical tradition took a new turn after Al-Ghazali criticized the works of the Peripatetics, the works of the Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina in particular. Yeah. Yet what we saw, Al-Ghazali criticized the falsafa of the Peripatetics, but in the process, during that discourse, Kalam, adversary Kalam is an adversary of falsafa. Kalam also was changed. Also, so Al-Ghazali himself was changed. What do we mean by that? Well, Al-Ghazali criticized many things in falsafa, but he was also influenced in certain respects by that. So his critique of falsafa opened the way for a new development in history One of these purely at the terminological level, in terms of terminology. Falsafa as a term became less used, and the new trend is a kind of to be indigenous in the Islamic sense. That is to go back to the Quran. So the word hikmah, right? But whatever it is, what Nasser said in his paper, yes, we must not forget that what is called kalam, ilmu kalam, was largely philosophical. So that's why the term philosophical kalam is used. The kalam, that aspect of ilmu kalam, then that was quite philosophical, even philosophy of nature. In the case of al-mutakallim, like al-Bakilani, for example, who wrote philosophical works. Yeah? And what is of interest nowadays in the why kalam is of interest to many modern people, including scientists, because certainly after Al-Ghazali, in particular, they adopted a philosophy of nature that was atomic, that was atomistic. In other words, in nature there is which is different from the peripatetic. So that came to spread to our part of the world, as you find in the works of in the works of Araniri. We look the works wonderfully translated by Professor Syed Muhammad Nakib Alantas. Yeah, then we can see the kind of philosophy that we have, but philosophy with the orientation, the kalam. So different emphasis, different approach. So that is a very important source of Malay philosophy. In the case of Hamzah earlier, it was a different kind of philosophy, which influenced by also the development of philosophy of Islamic thought in the heartland of Islam. Certainly, starting from the Surawardi, yeah, the successor of Al-Ghazali, who, in a sense, founded a new school of philosophy. That was the school founded by Surawardi, and this Al-Ghazali, and which is, in a sense, was different from the peripatetic philosophy, which was, in a sense, rationalistic, even analytical, as opposed to the Surawardi philosophy, which was intuitive, based more kind of with a spiritual orientation, more leaning now towards the experience, the inner experience of the heart. Yeah, in other words, in the study of philosophy, it's not just a matter of being logical, analytical, but also the question of appealing, which was later developed even further in Tasawwuf, in Sufism. Now, so in the case, so basically, next to the Araniri's philosophical kalam, so we have the mystical philosophy, which is basically what Tasawwuf, mysticism of Hamzah Fansuri, influenced by Ibn Arabi, because Ibn Arabi during his time, he represented a new phase of synthesis, a synthesis of peripatetic indifferences, synthesis with philosophical kalam, and now you have a very spiritual approach to philosophy to emphasize that inner experience, institution is important, is integral to philosophy. So, and this is different, of course, from what we understand today. in how the West understand philosophy. Philosophy is just depending a lot on reason, but now what I call the heart, the knowledge of the heart, the spiritual experience of the heart, which is also considered as part of philosophy. So I think and of course that's not all what falsafah is as far as Islamic thought is concerned. Nasar pointed out also that now even within that area called fiqh, but in particular usul fiqh, so there is philosophy. There is philosophy in the subject of principles of Islamic jurisprudence, usul fiqh. Yeah, and that's why some of our scholars today, when studying now usul fiqh, they refer to this as a kind of Islamic philosophy of law. So there is also falsafah. There is also philosophy on the subject of law, the subject of law in Islamic law. So there are other minor branches, current, especially through those kind of developed through poetry, but it's very, very interesting the kind of poetry and philosophy, that we have with Jalaluddin Rumi. Look at Jalaluddin Rumi. Of course, most people refer to him as a Sufi, as a mystic. People seldom call him a philosopher, but there is a lot of philosophy. There's a lot of kalam in Rumi's work, Jalaluddin Rumi. So this is important and to write. So to summarize, to cut it short, what it means is that first of all, there is philosophy understood in the very broad and general sense. To emphasize that philosophy, the word philosophy has several meanings. One meaning is the general meaning, just referring to a kind of knowledge, a form of knowledge. There's beyond simply the kind of knowledge that we associate with the physical senses, with experimentation, with empirical studies. There's only one form of knowledge, the kind of knowledge that keeps on changing, keeps on changing. There is the branch of knowledge that develops, that grows. The branch of knowledge that grows, adding more information, and sometimes also discarded because no longer proving to be relevant to the new units. So the kind of knowledge that keeps on changing. Yes, that's basically what science is. But philosophy refers to a form of knowledge that is it's like something like a principles there, dealing with principles. We are dealing with forms of knowledge that are perennial in nature, that embrace the lesser kinds of knowledge. So basically, what hikmah in Arabic means, because hikmah is not the same as knowledge in general. So hikmah dengan the ilm, they are when we use the word ilmu, I mean we are referring to knowledge in general, but when we refer to hikmah, it's more a specific kind of knowledge. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made a distinction between hikmah and knowledge, between wisdom and knowledge, by through two hadiths. In one hadith, the Prophet said that knowledge, ilmu ialah barang kehilangan orang Muslim, manakala hikmah barang kehilangan orang mukmin. You see, to emphasize the quality between the two. Wisdom is the lost property of a mu'min, whereas knowledge in general, the lost property of a Muslim. So the quality of the thing that is lost or the property that is lost, that explains. And so therefore, it's not. Therefore, the two words do not have the same meaning. They are not identical. So therefore the martabat, martabat hikmah tidak sama dengan martabat ilmu pada umumnya. So this the philosophy referring to the principles of knowledge of the sciences. We're going into a more fundamental form of knowledge. Okay, so I think with this kind of explanation, what is philosophy? Then when we look at the Malay manuscripts, we say, then inshallah, yeah, I mean, where to look for these different kinds of sciences, and of course, what do we mean by Malay-Islamic? I already explained earlier, so I will not repeat. Know how to study Malay-Islamic philosophy. How to study Malay Islamic philosophy based on what we already understand what philosophy is, and the wide meaning, the broader meaning, so that the Malay Islamic civilization was already rich with knowledge from these different branches of philosophy. So I said, well, yeah. So having understood what Malay Islamic philosophy means, how do we approach its study? Well, I am emphasizing and asserting that in order for us to study its legacy, the Malay Islamic legacy in philosophy, then manuscript studies is necessary. So, which goes back to what I started earlier in my why we need to give more attention to manuscript studies. And this necessity, the necessity to undertake manuscript studies, entails the provision of these prerequisites. So there are prerequisites, there's preconditions basically for manuscript studies to develop. Like in others, there are many kinds of arguments that we can put forward. Why today, even today, it is important, it is necessary. There must be some institutions in Malaysia which are developing, which are undertaking this manuscript studies. And certainly, I think ISTAC is one of them, because ISTAC has many manuscripts in its collection in the Syed Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas library. Of course, I mean, it's not just manuscript. I understand Malay manuscript. There are about 86 volumes, jilid, 86 jilid, 86 volumes. Then there are about more than 200 titles, different titles. That's only for the Malay. In Arabic, even more. So, we have Arabic manuscripts, we have Turkish manuscripts, we have Persian manuscripts, and on minor scale, maybe some others in Urdu and so on. So the point is, ISTAC's library is a house of treasures, of knowledge, waiting for us to study them. But going back to what I said earlier, but before you can study them, some preliminary work has to be done. Most people cannot just go to the manuscripts and study them. From that, yeah. So we need different groups of academics, of researchers, to prepare, to provide these what we call the prerequisites. And new generation should be trained how to study this. One more, we have already cut off, in a sense that the new generation is cut off from our past, because many no longer really are proficient in Jawi, especially the classical Jawi. But then people, some people say, well, why bother? Just keep them in the museum. Yeah. But no, if we are really serious about civilization making, civilization building, preserving our civilization to be civilized, we have to study. We have to study our legacy, what we call civilization. So manuscript studies should be an important part, especially in certain institutions. Not every institution, of course. Yeah, but I'm talking about, let's say, Atma, at the UKM, yeah, those leading to Center of Malay Studies, at the Academy Pengajian Melayu, University Malaya, and then in ISTAC. I think it's high time that they should all get together and discuss about the future of manuscript studies in Malaysia. Otherwise, I don't see the point of having that, of having these centers and academy. Okay, so this is basically, in other way, is through manuscript studies that we hope to understand Malay-Islamic philosophy. Yeah. We cannot advance in the study of Malay-Islamic philosophy unless we go to our legacy, which requires the active research in manuscript studies. All right. I just want to refer to about a book, Bibliography Manuscript Islam, the Museum Islam Malaysia. I work with my Uncle Ibrahim, Dr. Uncle Ibrahim. He was at that time in the Department of Malay Studies. I was in a faculty of science, but interested in the Muslim Islamic manuscripts. So we came up. So at that time, there was no Jakim yet. There was Pusat Islam. And in Pusat Islam, there was a division called this Museum Islam. And later, Museum Islam was later bought by all the manuscripts, also bought by Bukhari, the businessman Bukhari. But we managed to catalog, so if you look at this book, this book, which anyway, that is the one that I showed on the screen. So hundreds and half titles there. If you go through this book, you can understand what I've been saying. Yeah. In other words, to understand the scope, the extent, the scope of Malay-Islamic philosophy. Of course, not everything there, but there are sections on ilmu hikmah, on the ilmu tauhid. Now, ilmu tauhid, there's a lot of philosophy in ilmu tauhid. Yeah, it's a lot of talk on the philosophy, and then so usul fiqh, but mostly fiqh, but usul fiqh, the philosophy, and the book shows some ideas, give some ideas, the importance of philosophy, or the presence of philosophy in Malay manuscripts. All right. Now, the question of identifying the important Malay Islamic philosophical works. We need this thing. We need epistemological guidance, basically. The epistemological guidance, and this guidance, I would say, comes in the form of classification of knowledge in Islam, and this were my work of the same title, which was based on the PhD thesis that I did, and at the Temple. but for the purpose of publication as a book, I changed it to title Classification of Knowledge in Islam. Now, this is an important guide to librarians, to how to classify works on Islam, Islamic books. Now, especially manuscript. The question now, if we really want to have a systematic way of organizing manuscripts in libraries, you need this classification of knowledge. So I think that my book, because can be a very useful guide, and certainly to understand, for example, how the Islamic Museum at the Pusat Islam of that time organized the material is precisely based on the Islamic classification into the Naqli and Aqli. Yeah. But some works are both. In other words, some works are both based on Naqli and Aqli. Al-Ghazali divided knowledge, classified knowledge again into these Naqli and Aqli, and I think it will help. So to turning, we need perhaps also the help of our pioneers and predecessors, and certainly personally, I was influenced. I was greatly helped by the pioneering works of Professor Syed Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas, but of course, in the in the case of Professor Al-Atas, mainly, I think the works of the works of Raniri and Hamzafan, in order to understand the kind of Malay philosophy, what Malay philosophy is all about. I know, and for example, my good friend Professor Datuk Ahmad Adam, but more on the hikayat. But there is philosophy in Malay hikayat, because let's say it also contains cosmology. To understand, cosmology is a very important branch of philosophy. So, and I myself have written a few on Malay cosmology. Yeah. So Malay cosmology is another source of philosophy, and this is important to bear in mind. Then, basically, we need an intensification of research on Malay Islamic manuscripts. More research, and that's why if we are better organized, those involved in the study manuscript, we can ask for more. We can request for more. We need to promote research on this manuscript, and of course, it's not just, it's also to publish. We need to share with the rest of the world on our finding. And for this, I like to share with you that ISTAC, we produce the biannual journal of this As-Sajarah, and we make it a policy that a part of the journal is devoted to manuscript studies. So yeah, we are still not happy because only one or two contributing, but no, this is an international journal. This is very recognized as SI, as the Scopus recognition, and you can publish your research on manuscripts in this journal. So I think that's it. Just a summary, and I can just on some points. It's not really going detail into particular manuscript studies, no, because it's just to answer the question. No, if you are interested in Malay philosophy, Malay Islamic philosophy, where should we go to? And this is important because it is also a kind of a part of Malay literature that they don't organize knowledge in the same way as Western. Let's say have a particular work according to say, or history. So, for example, history the same way how historians today write is different from how history was written, because the principle of Tawheed, the unity, where materials from a number of subjects are put together, but always in the integrated way, yeah, in the coherent way, we understand, yeah. So even when it's about history, this is something also about cosmology. Why was that? That was one of the things that we need to find out. In the way the Malay mind, the way the Malay Muslim mind organize knowledge, the influence, their writing, their works, that is not the same as what we do today. And that's why there's a lot of misunderstanding, precisely because we try to understand the past works in the light of the present approach. That approach won't provide us the full answers to what we want to know. Sekian, terima kasih. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Prof, for a very illuminating talk on philosophy vis-a-vis related to Malay manuscripts, which I think is very helpful for most people, for many people, especially to myself, because in the past, personally, I was not able to identify what is really Malay manuscript that has philosophical qualities in them. But after I heard your talk today, I think I had a better glimpse of the concept of philosophy. And I guess there are many Malay manuscripts that has philosophical qualities in them. Before I open the session to question and answer session, I think I have one or two questions for you, Prof. It looks in the past, we in Malaysia, we call it kebijaksanaan. In Indonesia, normally they use the term local wisdom. Local wisdom. So when I read Sejarah Melayu, I find the authors not just tell about the events, the dates and the events, but also the author was very careful and very intelligent to write Sejarah Melayu in such a way that he criticized the royalty, the king, indirectly. And he tells the episodes with a meaning behind that for the king and for the people to understand. So, for example, when Sultan Mahmud want to marry Putri Gunung Ledang, Putri Gunung Ledang refused to marry him by not saying he refused, but he said, you had to build a gold bridge to my place. You had to collect the heart of mosquitoes, one tank full of this and that, which indirectly I feel she don't want to get married, but she don't want to say directly because otherwise she might face some problem. The same thing with other people, other thing like in certain cases when the first king of Malacca came, he faced so many challenges to the extent that he has to throw away his he has to throw away his gear on his head in order to make sure the ship do not get drawn. So then we interpret those episodes as philosophical ideas in sejarah Melayu.
Yes.
Huh?
So you want me to comment or what?
Yes, I want you to comment whether they are philosophical ideas of the author of sejarah Melayu. He don't criticize directly, but he criticize indirectly.
Well, I'm in the well-known example. Well, I mean, when we were small, I mean, we have heard these stories. Yeah? But the point here is that this kind of work contains elements of knowledge from what today we consider as different disciplines, different branches of knowledge. I say there is history there is ethics, there's morality, you know. So it's just all there, but in one work, this is the Hikayat. Yes, that kind of practice is not confined just to the Malays. It is universal in other cultures also. In other words, what we call today instruction, through instruction and moral instruction. Because when we deal with society, in this case, we have to deal with those in power, basically. Under rational philosophy, if it is rational philosophy, it is under political science. As a science. In the case of Al-Farabi, it's part of the Madani, an idea which our current Prime Minister is promoting. Is Madani. So it's basically the relationship between the ruler and the rule. And as far as ilmuwan is as a historian, how to teach moral lessons to society. There you're going into the philosophy, in the philosophy, moral philosophy. How best to advise? How best to advise the rulers? How best to advise the kind of conduct that is appropriate between rulers and so in the case of the Malays, based on our own culture, based on our own tradition, we have our own way, the Malay way. And of course, when the Malays became Muslims, then the Islamic ethics, Islamic approach combined with the Malay wisdom. That's why what you refer to Indonesia called kearifan lokal and then kebijaksanaan. But what in the case of Islam combines Islamic epistemology, combines the what you call the indigenous wisdom and the universal wisdom, because wisdom is both universal and particular. That is the Islamic philosophy's view. Wisdom is is both universal and local or indigenous. The local one is particular, dealing with particular wisdom, and this is where our own culture comes in. Our tradition, the good dimension of our culture. But there is the universal one. The universal one. So in the marriage between the Malays and Islam, that's why I talk about the marriage between the Malays and Islam. The marriage between ethnicity and religion. The source of ethnicity is the Malay culture, and the Malay identity, and the Malay characteristic. But then it's also the from religion. So the marriage between the Malays and Islam is a very, very interesting marriage. Very little has been studied. Yeah? I mean, we need to study more about this civilizational marriage between Malay ethnicity and religiosity, which in this case is in Islam. There's not that Islam influence, but sometimes people don't see that Islamic role, maybe because the terminology used, not Arabic, but the local, but actually in terms of the ideas, it is universal. Yeah. But of course, we have to bear in mind also the characteristic of the time, the period, the tendency, what kind of language to use. But then that's not the only thing happening. In other Islamic civilization was so rich, was so large, that we have so many different currents. So the kind of works that you mentioned, that is only one strand of thought, one line of practice. You cannot say reduce Malay Islam only to that kind of writing. So but still it is correct to say that, I mean, we are a bit different, say, from the more rationalistic kinds of writing of history of Ibn Khaldun, for example. It is already well, that was the future, basically. Ibn Khaldun looks at history from a different perspective, a different spirit, which is Islamic. But you can also say the earlier version of historical writing was also Islamic, provided we understand the role, the meaning and role of myths, legends, proverbs. There are many different ways of expressing truth and wisdom. Different ways. So the Malays did all that. So, but the modern critical might say, no, the legends are anti-Islam. No, because there are true legends and false legends. There are true interpretation of symbolism. Yeah. So we should, at the end of the day, it's not a question that things like symbols, agenda, myths, and themselves are wrong. But there was misinterpretation. People don't understand the true meaning of mythos, the true meaning of symbol, lambang, the true meaning of legenda. The ancient people express truth and legends by means of that, not the kind of rational language that we are using nowadays. That's why we don't understand. But it is true, there are false understanding of those things. And when they are false, they become superstition. Mythos become superstition when its true meaning has gone, disappeared. Okay, Doctor? That's my response.
Thank you very much, Prof. I would like to read a few other questions in the chat box. but this one is more like direct question. Mogamat Hartley from Cape Town, South Africa, asks, have anybody done research on Melayu Cape manuscripts during enslavement of Melayu Cape at the Cape of Sorrows, 1652 to 1838? I think that is a direct question. And he has another comment. This is more comment, which I understand what he wants to tell is that Jawi script was present, was available, was used even in the 15th century. Well, I just read what he commented.
Yes.
Do you have any further comment?
Yes, our brother from South Africa, I think he must be a Malay of descent, Malay descent. Well, I was very much interested in that subject. So when I was at the University of Malaya, I went several times to South Africa to study the origins of Islam, the Malay Islam in Cape Town. All right. So the descendants of Sheikh Yusuf of Makassar. No, I met some of the. I think there was one MA student at the time. He obtained his MA just studying, showing that the Malay community who were expelled by the Dutch and exiled to Cape Town under the leadership of Sheikh Yusuf. Basically, Jawi was the language, was the written language at that time. Yeah, to the extent even that it was used for a certain period by the Dutch. The Dutch themselves used that Jawi the script. All right, and that was the MA thesis of I think Brother Daud. He passed away already now, and it was very interesting, the thesis. Also to show that many Malay words entered into the African, the language of the Dutch. Yeah. So until today, there is a considerable number of Malay words in the African language. And the first word I was told was pisang. I love that. Okay, I said the word. Today, we South African, whether Malay or non-Malay, Muslim, well, the word is pisang. And that is from this the Malay word, pisang. Yes, I mean the important point, of course, is the how the Dutch use Jawi script at that time among themselves. Okay.
I think there are several other questions, Prof. I hope you don't mind. Maybe
no, I'm happy, Doc. Sorry, no, please.
About 5 questions. Another was, can we say that actually Malay authors of Islamic kitab in the past were actually philosophers, because when they write kitab, they add their comments to the text. They don't just translate the Arabic works only, but they add their own comments that might be relevant with the Malays in the archipelago. Can we consider them as probably philosophers also?
Well, Doc, I think the answer to the question, I would say, of course, not everybody,
Yeah.
not every work. I mean, we have to, that's why we need to study which one. But certainly some of them, yes, yeah. So the question of paraphrasing, not translation, but paraphrasing text. Paraphrasing maksudnya Arabic text. Yeah,
Yes.
it was not word for word translation. It's not like translation, but more of how to understand the original text in Arabic text and then express it in Malay, in Malay language. So here, of course, as I said, so some certainly philosophical in nature, but some others who still cannot run away from the issues that I already raised earlier. Because even in the writing in kitab about language, you can also go into philosophical, just as in the current modern world, for example. Yeah, you have to go into the philosophical aspects of language. Yes, certainly in the Malay works, there was some even talk about nahu, on the subject of nahu, on the grammar. You can bring in some philosophical thing. So the question of diversity of languages, the wisdom of translation from one language into another, you can go philosophical. And sometimes they provide glossaries. This is some glossaries, terms that need to be explained, and you cannot really explain some of the terms without being philosophical, without having the necessary philosophical knowledge. So first of all, yes, to accept in principle there is, but not to go too far saying that every is philosophical. Okay.
Okay, Prof. Another one is from somebody, Rizwan Sazali. He asked why Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina were considered as Neoplatonism philosophers. Why Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina were considered as Neoplatonism philosophers?
Okay.
Yes.
Now, well, of course, the word was used by the early non-Muslim scholars who studied Al-Farabi and Sina, especially Al-Farabi, because Al-Farabi Ibn Sina followed the path of Al-Farabi. We need to understand the Western mind that led them to classify Al-Farabi as Neoplatonist. But they should have said first Al-Farabi was a Muslim. They forget that he was a Muslim. So instead, refer to Platonists. The reason is because there was conflict of opinions, of views between Plato and Aristotle. Right? And in other words, when I say Neoplatonist, it means that those people who tried to accept that there are some thinkers who follow Aristotle, but somehow in terms they added their understanding of Aristotle with a kind of the spiritual understanding, metaphysical understanding that is to be found in Plato. But the term Neoplatonist is not accurate. It's not really accurate. He was a Neoplatonist to the extent that he tried to interpret Plato without really sticking to the exact ideas of Plato, but interpret Plato in a new way, perhaps also combining the Aristotle contribution. Let's have that. So that emphasis and trying to depict Al-Farabi as a Neoplatonist by forgetting Islamic dimension. Islam was the most important source of Al-Farabi, and it is the Quran that helped Al-Farabi bridge the differences between Plato and Aristotle. Not only that, synthesize, not just bridge, synthesize. And we can provide the proof. Al-Farabi wrote a work that tries to reconcile, to harmonize between the two sages, that refer to Plato and Aristotle. In other words, Plato, in some respects, follow Aristotle. In some other respects, followed Plato. The West had problem how to reconcile between these two until today. Until today, Westerners find difficulty how to unite the ideas of Plato and Aristotle. But Al-Farabi succeeded in harmonizing the two. Why? Because Islam, the Islamic thought, because the teaching of Islam have no problem of accepting Plato and Aristotle in certain respects, because in certain respects Islam follow Aristotle. I'm sorry, in some other respects follow Plato. So this again, the unity of in the case of Aristotle, it followed the rational approach, reason. But in the case of Plato, so through spiritual experience, trying to understand Plato is a kind of person who looks at things more from the metaphysical angle, from the mystical angle, spiritual angle. That's it. So if you just read Al-Farabi as Neoplatonist, that's wrong. That's a wrong view, a wrong. In other words, you don't understand the right Al-Farabi. The true Al-Farabi is not just the Platonism or the Neo-Platonism. Okay? But Islam looks at it differently. I look at Al-Farabi through the Islamic prism. Then when I see that, oh no, I mean these people don't understand. That's why in my classification of knowledge in Islam, I mentioned that also in that book. The true Al-Farabi is not where it's depicted by Western scholars. Okay.
Okay. There is only another two questions. I hope Prof can bear it.
Okay.
The time. Nazirul Mubin, she asked, from your point of view, Prof, what are the type of tradition and culture of knowledge during the 16th, 17th century of Malay world, which resulted to the flourishing of literary works by the Sufi and the so-called Pujangga Istana?
Okay. Now, what was happening during that period in the Malay world closely resembles what was going on in the rest of the Malay world, especially in the Persian-speaking world, in the Arabic-speaking world. So let's say, in the case of Al-Ghazali, Al-Ghazali is 11th century. He died in the early 12th century. So many works of Al-Ghazali were done. In fact, Al-Ghazali is the most important source of Islamic influence in the Malay world. In fact, I'm now heading a research project on Al-Ghazali's works in the Malay. Basically, trying to study the influence of Al-Ghazali by researching on the bibliographical evidence, and to show that right from the beginning. And that there is no doubt that of all the Muslim scholars, Al-Ghazali has the most extensive influence. But this is the thing: Al-Ghazali came after Ibn Sina, came after Ibn, so one Islamic thought has already, in a sense, changed. It's a new trend, yeah, the kind of more spiritual, or Westerners call more mystical, but basically more concerned with the divinity, with God, the divine attributes, yeah, that in order to be close to God, is both in thinking and in the this what I call practices, yeah, as the one. And furthermore, then you had a new beginning with the birth of a Sufism as organization. Yeah. Before Al-Ghazali, you don't have that. Yeah, basically it begins with Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani. That's when Sufism became organized. Yeah, became organized. This kind of collective pursuit, whereas before that it was individual. People just try to understand the deeper understanding of Islam and to follow the spiritual path of the Prophet. So it's more as kind of individual quest for knowledge and for mystical things. Yeah. So, but after 11th century onward, then Sufism became organized into numerous orders, tariqah, turuq, and this is where important factor, important agent of spread of Islam in the Malay world. So historians were correct to point out that Islam basically came to the part of the world through trade and Sufism, to tasawwuf. Yeah, but in many cases, both exist in the same one person, because the same individual was both a trader and a follower of Sufism. So, but 16th century, talking about 15th century, for example, just one part of my PhD thesis on Kutubuddin Shirazi. So there are many who came from Shiraz, this Persian speaking. Many of them were scholars. Yeah? But remember, because nowadays misunderstand this, this word in Iran. Yes, from Iran, but at that time these people were Sunnis, not Shia. Shiism only became the dominant in Iran after the Safavids, since the Safavids, but not during the time of Al-Ghazali, Kutubuddin Shirazi, yeah, in Omar Khayyam. These were all Sunnis. Yeah, but the point is, Persian influence on Malay thought in the 16th century was very significant. Look at the influence, the influences on the Hamzah Fansuri. All the scholars who influenced, who influenced the Hamzah Fansuri were Persian scholars. Yeah, they were Sufis. So mystical philosophy, as represented by Hamzah Fansuri, is an important dimension of Malay Islam, precisely because in the Persian-speaking world, they were dominant. That was a dominant. So the kind of thought of that was brought up by Ibn Rushd was just marginalized in the Malay world. The Malay world decided to be with Al-Ghazali rather than with Ibn Rushd. That was the Malay choice. The Malay choice. If you want to understand why certain things happen in Malay Islamic thought, yeah, why the Malay Islamic thought concerned with Sufism, because a lot of the books that studied by the local Malay, books written by the Sufi scholars. even interpretation of the Sharia, of Islamic law, were more through the understanding of the Sufis. So my point is, what was going on in the Middle East influence the kind of Islam that was developed in our part of the world. So that was the historical reason. Okay.
Okay, I think this is the last question. Shazani asked this question. How do we relate Malay oral and written tradition to gain greater worldview about Malay-Islamic wisdom or hikmah? How do we relate Malay oral and written tradition to gain a greater worldview about Malay-Islamic wisdom or hikmah?
Yeah.
Prof.
Now, let's take the larger view in Islam. Because in Islam, oral tradition is something important. Basically, originally, religion was taught through oral means. So oral tradition, yeah. What was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, what came out from the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ, yeah, they first memorize. The importance of memorization, yeah, and slowly, of course, it's important to preserve in order to I think the Prophet ﷺ realized, of course, what's going to happen. The power of the collective memory is going to decrease, not increase, and that is true. What's happening? We become power of memory becomes weaker and weaker. In our own time, how weak it is. Yeah, we need the help of technology. We need the help of information technology to preserve our knowledge, because we were not as good in memory as like the early Muslim. So the Prophet ﷺ saw the necessity. Yeah. So but then the oral tradition survived, especially on spiritual matters, and this where the Sufis in particular insist that there were certain things that were not written, but passed down from one generation to another through oral. And this, but is only one example. Second example, even on scientific matters, scientific issues like medicine, for example, yeah, the role of the family. In the past, the family played a very important role in the development of medicine. Yeah? What they call medical families. And this is related to Islam, the medical families who from India, from Persia, all right, who possess knowledge in medicine. Then when the Caliph want to develop this, yeah, these the people put them into writing. So that transition from oral tradition and writing was very important in the history of Islam. Even today, yeah, there's certain kind of knowledge in certain branches of medicine that the secrets of medical knowledge were passed from father to son. Yeah, that happened also in the Malay world with regard to the Malay medicine, for example. So the keluarga Bomo, we look at the keluarga Bomo. Yeah, so ayah Bomo turunkan ilmunya kepada anaknya, that from generation to generation. That's not just a repetition, but in the Malay context, yeah. So if not because of the oral tradition, many things did not survive in the Malay world. So at one time in the early part, there's no doubt that Islam was spread in the Malay world not through writing, but through the oral tradition. So later, of course, writing, became more important, but that did not make oral tradition disappear altogether. So this, I think this is important to realize the relationship between oral and written tradition in the Malay, in the Malay context, in the sense that what the Malay ulama knew was not entirely written. Something not written, but passed from one generation to another. That's part of the Malay culture, the importance of the oral tradition. That's what I can say. That any Datuk, Anda Doktor.
I think we come to the end of the question and answer session, Prof. I will like to say that we have learned a lot on the subject of Malay world and its relation with philosophical works. We have a better idea of what is Malay manuscript that we can consider contain philosophical ideas. And I was also happy that quite a number of questions were put up by our by our viewers for the session. So I hope this session can be of great use to people who want to study philosophy in Malay manuscript in the future, and you all can open the lecture in ISTAC TV. So on behalf of all those who were present here, I would like to thank Prof. Osman for this very illuminating talk on Malay world and Malay world, Malay manuscript and philosophy. And I hope we will be able to, in future, to see more people, more Malaysian especially, are interested to study Malay manuscript from the perspective of philosophy. So with that, we thank you again, Prof. Emeritus Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar for the for having
Thank you.
session. Yes. So saya sudahi majlis dengan ucapan wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you.
The great lecture. Alhamdulillah. Well done.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very great.
Okay. Assalamualaikum.
Wassalam.